I used to wake up in the morning with this negative and heavy feeling on my chest. Already from the beginning of my morning, I'd have negative thoughts that would drive me to hate myself. All my mistakes, all my failures, everything that I'm not good at was just being repeatedly shown into my head. It was like I couldn't escape it. I was stuck in this endless cycle of self-hatred that eventually that self-hatred led me to be an inactive guy. I had ambition, I had goals that I wanted to achieve, but due to the guilt and the shame that I had for being the way that I was and hating myself as a result from it, I wouldn't do anything. I was a lonely guy who always hated on everybody else who was doing the wrong things. But I myself wasn't better. I hated myself for who I was, and perhaps I was projecting my self-hatred upon everybody else. I was a sucker for love. I wanted affection. I wanted to have a beautiful woman next to me, but I couldn't. I was unattractive in the sense that my energy, the man that I was, the habits that I had, were not aligned to the woman that I wanted to attract in the first place. So of course, I was lonely. Of course, I didn't have anyone. In order for me to cope with the loneliness, I would play video games because that was the one thing that I was good at. It was the one thing where I could show my skills, where I could show my capabilities, where I could at least dominate people. In the real world, I was nothing. In the real world, I was a nobody. It was always inside, either watching shows, smoking weed, watching porn, just wasting my time. Being on social media and seeing other people succeed in their lives and being envious that they are making progress. And I knew who those people were who were growing. They were people of my local area. I know what qualities they had, and they were all quote-unquote bad people. They weren't supposed to be successful, but they were doing one thing that I wasn't doing, and that was just taking action. Well, I was just lying there complaining, lying there being miserable. So after years of doing that, after years of being a fuck up and just wasting my time continuously, repeatedly, as if there was no stop to it, there was this moment where I was high in my garden, and I was obliterated. Like I couldn't even get up, but for some reason, my mind was still working, and I had a outer body experience where I just saw all the mistakes that I was making for so many years. Everything that I was doing wrong was shown to me. There was a decision that I needed to make, which I was avoiding for a very long time. Around that period, I was dating somebody that I didn't want to date. And as I was avoiding the reality of that, I needed to end that relationship with her. I got myself to be in that position in the first place, of being a fucking stoner, and a guy who was addicted to weed and a guy who was addicted to running away. And luckily, the outer body experience just showed me an escape. That's when it clicked for me, like, okay, I have the roadmap laid in front of me. I don't know who is telling me this. I don't know how it got me to be here, but I have to do something with it. And luckily, my younger self did take that action, and he got himself to break up with that girl, which he had a very hard time doing because I was still lonely. I was still depressed. I still hated myself. But perhaps my ambition was bubbling up. It was boiling. And the real me, who was being numbed by the weed, who was being numbed by all the instant gratification that I was indulging in at that time, he was coming out. It was like, no, we don't want to live this way. You have so many great qualities. Make something out of yourself. So, with a lot of fear, with a lot of anxiety, with a lot of stress, I made that decision to go down a lonely path and to focus on my self-development. That's perhaps one of the greatest decisions that I've made in my life. Because although I ended up being somewhat lonely for a short period of time, the serenity that I experienced in that moment was, I don't know how I could even explain it. It was fresh to me. After that outer body experience and before I made the decision to end the relationship with that girl and to set my life straight towards who I wanted to be, I sat myself down in this room, in my chair, which is actually over there, and I grabbed a piece of paper and I just wrote at the top, who do I want to be? And I just genuinely sat there and thought to myself, who is it that I want to be? What is it that I want to look like? What is it I want to smell like? What is it that I want to talk like? What energy do I want to have around the people? What's so funny is that in the beginning, it was very hard for me to align myself to that because I was stuck with that idea and that vision that I had of myself, like, oh, I'm still a stoner, oh, I'm still a porn addict. But the moment that I set out like that goal, that intention for me to strive to being a greater version of myself, that allowed me to sacrifice for it, because now the sacrifice, now the efforts were worth for something. Now, it wasn't easy. I had a very hard time because my self-belief wasn't updated to that person that I wanted to be, yet the intention was there, and I just simply had to act. Sometimes I get like these impulses to still indulge in weed. Sometimes they still appear, even after 3 years, and I ask myself, is this what my greatest self would do? And if the answer is no, then I know, okay, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. This is the old me, the old version of myself, who was lonely, who was depressed, who was trying to cope with his pain, who was trying to cope with his depression. That's him just trying to come up and trying to swoop me away. After 3 years of aligning myself to the ideal or the better version of me, and after many mistakes of still going down that path, because it's not going to be perfect, and it definitely wasn't easy, as in the sense that you don't change in 1, 2, 3. After 3 years, I still have areas that I gotta improve, and that will be something that I will have to do for the rest of my life, because that ideal version of who you want to be is not something that you achieve instantly. But after 3 years, I've managed to not hate myself anymore, because now I can look back on all the actions and all the decisions that I've made that were aligned towards my greatest self, and it makes me smile. It makes me pat myself on the shoulder. If you've been depressed for 10 years, if you've been smoking weed for 10 years, if you've been running away from truths for 10 years and avoiding discomfort and living in this life of instant gratification where you don't want to confront the reality that you are shown, the reality that you are living, to now doing that for a continuous amount of time, which is now 3 years for me. I never thought that I would even say this. I'm absolutely grateful for my younger self that he made those decisions, that he willingly chose to go through the pain, that he willingly chose to go through the discomfort, that he willingly chose to train himself to be disciplined. To now say like, okay, I've been way more consistent than I was before, and this is the progress that I've made in 3 years. I wonder what the progress will be in the next 3 years. Where will I be then? If I continuously align myself towards the greatest version of myself. During this journey, what I did experience is that sometimes my ego would come into play, and my ego would like try to tell me that I don't need to think about my greatest self anymore, that I am already that person. But that's false, because what happened whenever I did that is I made less progress and I even digressed. You know, sometimes I get the thought, instead of waking up early, I should sleep in. But every time that I sleep in and I don't wake up when my alarm goes off because I have to get things done for my future self, I feel bad, I feel worse, I feel that self-hatred coming in again. At a certain point, I've realized like that self-hatred, what is it? Self-hatred is the result of doing activities that you know that you shouldn't be doing, but yet you are doing them. And deep down, you know that what you're doing is wrong, and as a result, you hate yourself. Now, the problem with self-hatred is that you start expressing that to other people. Your self-hatred will never be shown to you. You will be a negative person who will just hate everybody else and all the success that everybody else has, because deep down you are jealous, yet you don't want to accept it. And as I've experienced that life, I can now say that, okay, this is what I was going through, and perhaps this is what a lot of people are going through in their lives. Maybe this is why there are so many bitter people. People who keep working their 9-to-5 job. People who got married to a woman they didn't want to get married to. And then eventually they hate the life that they have. And they're filled with anger. They're filled with aggression. And they out it out on their loved ones. They out it out on their children. They out it out on other family members. They out it out on their jobs, to their colleagues. Because they just have a hard time with accepting that they have made a mistake. And that brings them to hate themselves, but they don't want to hate themselves, so they gotta express that hatred to the outside world. Now, upon realization, that's not a life that I want to live. So perhaps, indeed, I have to continuously sacrifice. I have to continuously be disciplined. Because if I don't, I'll end up like them. And I don't want my wife to experience that side of me. I don't want my future children to experience that side of me. I don't want my family-in-law. Nobody else. I've already been that negative guy, and it never helped me. So although this journey brings a lot of challenges, although this way of life isn't really the easiest one, it's filled with pain in the short term, but in the long term, I've seen so many great things. I'm now standing here recording this YouTube video, which is something that I never thought of doing in the past, because I was so shy, because I was so awkward, I was so insecure. Although I always wanted to do this, although I always wanted to have this skill, I didn't take action. And that contributed towards my self-hatred. What I've experienced with myself is that whenever I have an idea, I have to act on it. If I don't act on that idea, which in my mind seemed like a good idea. Not doing it brings me to hate myself because I know that I had an opportunity, I didn't take my opportunity. So by aligning myself towards my greatest self and by ruthlessly questioning my decisions, that every time before I did something, questioning, is this aligned to who I want to be? Getting a no answer, not doing it, and then doing the activities that did align myself towards my greatest self eventually got me to overcome my self-hatred. Now, being aware that I cannot allow my ego to come in and take me down, I have to always remind myself of who I want to be and never think that I should ignore the habits that will get me closer towards becoming that man. I want to thank you for watching this video. If you want to learn how to manage your emotional behaviors to make better decisions, well, click the first link in the description box right now. I want to wish you a very nice day, and remember that you are 100% responsible for the results in your life. Make the hard decision today, and I'll see you in the next one. All right? Bye-bye.